What if survival meant rewriting the rules of life itself? In Kenya, the land is never just land. It shifts beneath the feet. The wide-open savannah hums with cicadas, broken by the thrum of hooves chasing the horizon. In the north, deserts burn and crack like broken clay pots, where each drop of water is guarded like treasure. And high in the mountains, the air thins. Cold winds bite, and people carve out lives where the earth seems unwilling to give. Here, across landscapes that test both body and spirit, hidden tribes endure, each bound to their land, each carrying stories of defiance and belonging. Their ways remain largely unseen, whispered in fire smoke and sung against the wind. The question is, how do they hold on when the world around them keeps shifting? Far across the open savannas of East Africa, where acacia trees cast long shadows and lions still roam, a people stand as guardians of both land and memory. They are the Maasai, famed for their warriors draped in red cloth, and for a culture where cattle are more than wealth. They are life itself. For centuries, the Maasai moved with the rhythm of the grasslands, following the rains that feed both herds and humans. Their history tells of a migration from the Nile Valley southward into the Rift Valley, where they carved their place in the vast plains of Kenya and Tanzania. They became herders of immense resilience, shaping their existence around the fragile balance between drought and abundance, predator and protector. But life on the savannah has never been simple. The same land that nourishes the Maasai has long been tested by fire and scarcity. Drought burns the grasses to dust, threatening herds with starvation. Raids and rivalries once stirred blood across these plains, for cattle were not only wealth, but survival. Even as the wild herds of elephants and antelope moved endlessly across the land, the Maasai too walked a path of endurance, holding fast to their traditions in times of peril. And yet their identity rises like the sound of their chants, unbroken against the wind. The image of the warrior, spear in hand and shuka flowing crimson against the golden savannah, endures as a living emblem of strength and pride. In the face of change, the Maasai remain rooted to the soil and the sky, to the dance of firelight and the bond between people and cattle. Their story is one of defiance and beauty, a people who made the grasslands not just their home, but their eternal sanctuary. North of the great savannas, where the grass thins and the land grows harsher beneath the desert sun, live the Samburu, close kin to the Maasai, yet distinct in spirit and survival. Here, the earth is dust red, the acacia trees stand sparse, and the horizon stretches unbroken. In this vast expanse, the Samburu carved their life around cattle, goats, and camels, moving with the seasons, like shadows upon the sand. Their ancestors trace the same broad migrations from the Nile Valley, carrying with them language, cattle, and traditions of pastoral life. Yet unlike their cousins of the greener plains, the Samburu settled in harsher ground, a place where water lies hidden deep beneath stone and survival demands constant vigilance. To endure here is to read the desert itself, to follow clouds across the sky, to sense where pastures may return after the long, dry winds. The struggle has always been written in the land. Drought arrives with silence, stealing away grass and leaving herds thin and restless. Conflict with rivals has long shaped their history. For in a world where livestock is wealth, raids and defense once defined manhood and community strength. Each bead strung into their brilliant ornaments speaks of lineage, courage, and identity. Jewelry not merely for beauty, but for memory and belonging. And still, the Samburu rise with dignity against the weight of hardship. Warriors, tall and adorned with shining beads, gather in ritual dance beneath the desert moon, their songs carrying across the still night. Women craft colors from the earth itself, weaving circles of identity that brighten the harshest landscapes. In the Samburu, one sees a people who stand unbroken by heat and dust, their culture shining as vividly as the beads they wear. Against the silence of the desert, they remain an enduring voice, bound to their land and their herds, resilient as the sun that crowns their world. In the far northwest of Kenya, where the desert meets a vast inland sea, life gathers around the shimmering waters of Lake Turkana. Here dwell the Turkana people, keepers of one of the harshest landscapes on the continent. Their homeland is a place of relentless extremes, volcanic rocks scattered across endless sand, winds sweeping dust across the sky, and heat that bends the horizon into fire. Yet against this unforgiving world, the Turkana endure. Their story reaches back through centuries, shaped by survival in an arid land. They are pastoralists, bound to their herds of camels, cattle, goats, and donkeys. Moving across the desert plains, they follow scarce pastures and hidden wells, their lives tied to the rhythm of water and drought. Lake Turkana itself, green and vast, has long been both a blessing and a trial. Its fish and shorelines sustain life, but its salt-rich waters offer no relief from thirst, demanding resilience and knowledge to thrive here. Conflict has always shadowed the Turkana's existence. In a place where grass is rare and water fleeting, neighbors have long contended for survival. Raids driven by need and tradition once echoed across these deserts. Yet within this struggle lies a culture of immense strength, where identity is preserved through song, dance, and the deep bond between people and their herds. And still, the Turkana rise from the dust like fire from stone. Their ornaments of bright beads, layered across neck and chest, shine against the muted desert earth. Their ceremonies resound with chants and movement, defying silence with celebration. Even in the harshest drought, their spirit remains unbroken, as if drawn from the resilience of the volcanic land itself. The Turkana are a people forged in heat and scarcity, enduring where few can stand. Their lives forever bound to the desert winds and the great lake that bears their name. In the rugged hills and valleys of western Kenya, where dry plains rise suddenly into green escarpments, live the Pokot, a people whose lives are bound to both cattle and the soil. Their homeland straddles a frontier between savannah and highland, a place of contrasts where the earth yields grain in some seasons and demands herds in others. It is here that the Pokot shaped a culture of both farmers and herders, adapting to a land that never offers certainty. Their history carries echoes of migration, moving with cattle from the north and later carving fields into the fertile mountain slopes. In the highlands, they learned to grow sorghum, millet, and maize, while in the lowlands, they drove their herds across thornbush plains in search of water. This dual existence became their strength. The plow and the spear, the harvest and the raid, both written into their way of life. Yet survival was never simple. Drought presses hard against the land, draining rivers and thinning herds. Scarcity has long sharpened rivalries with neighbors, for cattle are not only wealth, but the very lifeblood of family and community. In this tension, the Pokot became renowned for their initiation rites, where young men crossed into adulthood through trials of endurance, pain, and courage. These ceremonies, carved into memory by fire and song, gave each generation the strength to endure a world of struggle. And still, the Pokot endure with a fierce beauty. At dances, men leap high into the night air, their chants rising with the rhythm of drums, while women adorn themselves with strings of beads that glow in the firelight. In their ceremonies, courage is not only tested but celebrated, binding the people to their ancestors and to the land itself. Against hardship, the Pokot stand as both herders of cattle and keepers of the earth, a people forged by resilience, whose spirit endures in the rugged landscapes they call home. Where the sands of northern Kenya stretch into endless horizons, where thorn trees stand lonely beneath the burning sun, live the Rendii, herders of camels and keepers of the desert's silence. Their homeland lies between the rocky lava fields and the shifting dunes, a place so stark that survival itself feels like an act of defiance. Yet in this vast emptiness, the Rendii shaped a life that moves with the rhythm of their animals, guided by memory, tradition, and the stars above. Long ago, their ancestors journeyed from the north, bringing with them the camel, the great ship of the desert. With it came a way of life that could endure where cattle and crops could not. They built nomadic settlements of round huts, woven from sticks and hides, designed to be lifted and carried across the sands. In this mobility lay their strength, for the desert demands movement, and the Rendil answered with journeys across distances where only the wind leaves tracks. The conflict of their existence has always been scarcity. Drought lingers like a shadow, consuming pastures and driving herds to the edge of survival. Rival groups have long clashed over wells and grazing, for in these lands, water is more precious than gold. To guard life here is to defend the well, to protect the camel, and to endure hunger when the rains fail. These struggles carved resilience into the people, teaching endurance in the face of silence and heat. Yet within this harshness lives a culture of striking beauty. Under the desert night, the Rendilo look to the stars, which guide their herds and mark the seasons. Their ceremonies, rich with song and prayer, echo across the stillness of the dunes. Beads and ornaments shimmer against the pale desert light, symbols of belonging carried through generations. In their camels, in their journeys, in their stories of endurance, the Rendil embody the unbroken spirit of the desert, a people who turned one of the world's harshest landscapes into a living sanctuary. Across the arid stretches of northern Kenya, where the land lies cracked beneath the sun and the horizon shimmers with heat, live the Borana, herders bound not only to their animals, but to the ancient wells that sustain them. Their homeland is a place where water is the truest measure of life, and the Borana have built their culture around its guardianship, passing down traditions as enduring as the earth itself. Their ancestors trace their roots to the Cushitic migrations that swept across the Horn of Africa, bringing with them cattle, camels, and a language that still binds them together today. Over centuries, they learned to read the desert and the savannah, to follow the shifting rains, and to gather around the rare lifelines hidden beneath the ground. Out of this knowledge came their remarkable wells, some sunk so deep that men form human chains, passing water upward in leather vessels, sustaining both herds and people in times of trial. Yet life for the Borana has never been untouched by conflict. Drought stalks their land with unrelenting force, and neighbors have long contended for wells and grazing grounds. Raids and rivalries tested their strength, for to lose cattle was to lose survival itself. Even within their own society, the balance of power has always required vigilance. Councils of elders guiding with wisdom, traditions shaping order across generations. And still, the Borana endure, their resilience etched into every ritual and gathering. When ceremonies unfold, chants rise with the sound of drums, binding the people to ancestors and to the land that sustains them. Around the sacred wells, stories echo of those who once drew water in times of famine, keeping life alive when hope seemed thin. In their deep bond with cattle, in their guardianship of water, and in their unbroken rituals, the Borana stand as a people who transformed scarcity into continuity. They remain keepers of both earth and spirit, resilient in the face of a land that tests all who walk upon it. Across the far northeast of Kenya, where the land opens into wide plains of dust and thorn, live the Somali, nomadic herders and traders whose lives have long been shaped by the endless horizon. Their homeland lies close to the Horn of Africa, a crossroads of desert winds and ancient roots where survival depends on both the strength of herds and the knowledge of movement. In this vast, arid expanse, the Somali carved a culture of resilience, carrying with them traditions that echo across centuries. Their story stretches back through the migrations of Cushitic peoples, bringing with them camels, cattle, and goats, the lifeblood of nomadic life. With these herds, the Somali learned to endure the barrenness of the land, moving constantly in search of pasture and water. The camel became their greatest companion, able to cross distances where no other animal could survive, its endurance mirrored in the people themselves. Alongside herding, the Somali carried the spirit of trade, their caravans stretching across deserts, connecting distant settlements and coastal ports with goods, stories, and memory. The conflict of this life lies in the land itself. Drought grips the northeast with unrelenting force, leaving pastures brittle and wells dry. Scarcity fuels old rivalries as groups contend for grazing grounds and waterholes. For generations, raids and defense became part of existence, not for conquest, but for survival, in a world where every drop of water, every blade of grass, meant life or death. The harshness of the desert demanded strength, vigilance, and unity. Yet within this struggle shines the resilience of the Somali spirit. Their beadwork glimmers under the desert sun, their songs and poetry carry across the wind, and their gatherings under the acacia trees bind the people together in memory and identity. The camel caravans, the chants of herders, the markets alive with color and exchange, all speak of a culture that endures where the desert tests every step. The Somali of Kenya remain voices of the arid lands, shaped by struggle yet unbroken, carrying the desert within their spirit like an endless song. On the fertile foothills of Mount Kenya, where mist drifts through forests and rivers carve silver paths down the mountain's flanks, live the Kikuyu, farmers whose lives have long been bound to the richness of the soil. Their homeland is a place of abundance, where dark volcanic earth yields harvests of grain, banana, and sweet potato, and where the mountain itself rises as a sacred presence, guiding both spirit and survival. The Kikuyu trace their story to ancient migrations from the north, settling where the land offered promise and plenty. Here, they learned to work the soil with care, building terraces along the hillsides and shaping fields that could sustain generations. In their traditions, Mount Kenya is more than a peak of stone and ice. It is the dwelling of spirits, a place of origin and reverence. Each morning, prayers once rose facing its slopes, a sign of the bond between the people and the mountain that watched over them. But abundance does not erase struggle. The Kikuyu faced threats from rival groups who sought to raid their farms, and the challenge of drought that could wither even the most fertile ground. Defending their harvests and preserving their traditions required unity, guided by councils of elders whose wisdom settled disputes and safeguarded the community. Within this balance of soil, spirit, and struggle, the Kikuyu forged a culture both resilient and deeply rooted. And still, their identity flows like the rivers that spring from Mount Kenya's heights. The rhythm of farming seasons, the rituals that honor ancestors, the gatherings around sacred trees, all hold the memory of countless generations who tilled the same soil. Their resilience lies not in conquest, but in cultivation, in the patient turning of earth and the faith placed in the mountain that towers above them. The Kikuyu remain keepers of fertile land, guardians of tradition, and children of Mount Kenya's shadow, a people whose strength was sown in the soil and who continue to rise with the mountain at their side. Along the broad shores of Lake Victoria, where the water stretches farther than the eye can see and the horizon melts into sky, live the Luo, fishermen whose lives have always been tied to the rhythm of the lake. Their homeland is a world of canoes and rippling currents, of islands rising like green jewels, and of rivers that feed the great inland sea. Here, water is both pathway and provider, a force that has shaped the Luo through centuries of change. Their ancestors journeyed southward from the Nile regions, carrying with them language and memory, and found in Lake Victoria a place where fish and fertile floodplains could sustain life. The lake became their foundation, offering tilapia, Nile perch, and endless bounty. Canoes carved from single tree trunks skimmed across the waves, their movements as steady as the winds, turning the Luo into masters of both fishing and river travel. With every net cast and every oar pulled, they bound their survival to the living waters. Yet life along the lake is never free of conflict. Storms rise suddenly, waves swelling into danger that swallows boats without warning. The floods of heavy rains have swept away villages and fields, leaving behind hunger and loss. Competition over fishing grounds has long tested relations among neighbors. For when waters grow poor, survival demands struggle. Even so, the Luo endured, guided by traditions of clan unity and by the wisdom of elders who preserved order across generations. And still, the Luo thrive with a spirit as fluid as the water itself. Their songs echo across the lake at dawn, canoes gliding across glassy waves as the sun breaks golden over the horizon. Their dances, alive with drums and movement, honor both ancestors and the eternal cycle of life. To the Luo, the lake is more than sustenance. It is identity, a vast mirror where their history and resilience are forever reflected. They remain children of the water, a people who found strength in the lake's embrace and shaped their destiny upon its endless expanse. Across the rolling hills and dry plains of eastern Kenya, where thorn trees scatter across the horizon and rains fall with fleeting promise, live the Kamba, a people known both as farmers of the soil and as master carvers of wood. Their homeland lies between fertile ridges and semi-arid lowlands, a land that demands both patience and craft. Here, the Kamba built a life shaped by resilience, trade, and artistry, turning hardship into strength and wood into memory. Their story tells of ancient migrations from the north and east, journeys that brought them to the slopes and valleys where rivers cut deep into the land. On the ridges, they planted millet, sorghum, and maize, nurturing harvests in fertile soils. In the plains, they endured long droughts, driving goats and cattle to find water and grazing. Yet beyond farming and herding, the Kamba became renowned for a gift that set them apart: the ability to shape wood into objects of meaning. From walking staffs and stools to intricate carvings of animals and spirits, their hands carried the knowledge of generations, making the Kamba's artistry treasured far beyond their homeland. But survival in their land has always carried trials. The rains do not always come, and when drought lingers, the soil cracks and the harvest fades. Hunger presses against families, and herds weaken beneath the sun. Conflict, too, has shaped their past, as neighbors once vied for land, cattle, and trade routes. Yet through it all, the Kamba turned to endurance, guided by community and the strength of traditions that wove them together. And still, the Kamba rise with resilience. In villages, the rhythm of pestles grinding grain blends with the laughter of children. In workshops, the tap of carving tools gives shape to wood, capturing the life of animals, ancestors, and dreams. Their dances echo through the hills with drums and chants that honor both spirit and survival. The Kamba remain as both cultivators and creators, a people who drew life from fragile soil and beauty from the heart of the tree, shaping a legacy that endures across the landscapes of eastern Kenya. On the lush eastern slopes of Mount Kenya, where forests cloak the ridges in green and rivers pour down from glaciers high above, live the Meru, farmers, guardians of sacred groves, and keepers of traditions rooted deep in the mountain's shadow. Their homeland lies where fertile earth meets cool highland air, a place where the mountain is more than a landmark. It is the axis of life itself, a presence both physical and spiritual. The Meru trace their origins to migrations from the north, carrying with them cattle and memory. But it was on these volcanic slopes that their story took root. Here, the soil proved generous, yielding harvests of millet, beans, and bananas, and later coffee and tea that thrived in the mist. Rivers gave them water, forests gave them shelter, and the mountain gave them a sense of belonging. In their worldview, the mountain is sacred, its peaks the dwelling of spirits, its slopes dotted with groves where rituals bound the people to their ancestors and to the land itself. Yet their journey was not without struggle. The same fertile ground that sustained them also demanded defense. Rivalries with neighboring groups once turned the ridges into contested ground, and famine in times of drought threatened even the most secure fields. The Meru answered with unity, guided by councils of elders whose authority settled disputes and preserved balance. In their initiation ceremonies, generations were bound together, ensuring that identity and strength would endure even through hardship. And still, the Meru rise with the mountain, their culture as enduring as the forests that crown its slopes. Sacred rituals are remembered in the quiet of groves, while songs and dances give voice to stories that stretch back through centuries. Farming remains the heart of their resilience, a dialogue with the soil that has sustained them across ages. To the Meru, Mount Kenya is not only a mountain, but an ancestor, a timeless witness to their endurance. In its shadow, they became who they are: cultivators, guardians, and a people whose spirit, like the mountain itself, stands unyielding against time.